Oh, hey there, this is Dr. Osar. Do your clients complain about neck tightness after they do shoulder or arm exercises? How about low back tightness after they do hip exercises? Well, thank you so much for joining us in today's edition of Integrative Movement Insider. I'm Dr. Osar, author of the soon-to-be released copy of Corrective Exercise Solutions to Common Hip and Shoulder Dysfunction, 2nd edition, later this year. So this question came up this past weekend on our 3rd module of 2 Anatomy Geeks, where Jill and I were discussing the most common reasons why your clients get tight. One of the things we talked about in this series, the anatomy of the nervous system, is the nervous system will respond to the information it's receiving from the proprioceptive system, so all the receptors in our muscles, tendons, ligaments, joint capsules, fascia, all those connective tissues, as well as what it's receiving from the visual system, as well as the vestibular system, and then it takes all this information, it integrates it, it interprets and then integrates it, and then gives out a motor output. So a muscle response based upon what the information is it's receiving, as well as what the functional goals are, as well as the ability of the client. So let's think about this concept of tightness. Hello, my friend Rahul from India, who's part of our 2 Anatomy Geeks community last weekend as well, and part of our Integrative Movement Specialist certification program. We just finished it, actually, so thanks for being on, my friend. So one of the things that we discussed is the nervous system, when it interprets a joint that's not in great position, for example. So just say your shoulder is stuck in this forward shoulder position. Now, a lot of our colleagues, not a lot, but a few of our colleagues will say, hey, the forward shoulder posture, the forward head, it doesn't matter. Just train your clients. However, when we start to look at why does your body get tight, or why does the nervous system make your muscles shorten down and tighten down? Well, one of the things that it's responding to is the position of the joint. So let's take the ball and socket joint, for example. So the ball and socket joint, the ball, the humeral head on the glenoid fossa, the socket of the shoulder joint, should be relatively well centered and maintain that centered position, similar to a ball in the socket, even though it's actually more akin to a golf ball on a golf tee. So when that ball is centered on the golf tee, then the golfer can go and strike the ball, and hopefully it goes where it needs to go, sometimes. I'm not a golfer, but I've heard the stories from my golfing friends. Hello, Pete Rizzo, how are you? And my good friend Stephen Schroll as well. So one of the things that the nervous system is responding to is the relationship of the joint position. It receives the best information and creates the best and most appropriate motor output or muscle output when the joint is relatively well centrated or aligned and controlled humeral head upon the glenoid fossa. So anything that changes the position of the ball, the humeral head, on the socket, then alters the information going back to the central nervous system, and now the central nervous system has to respond to that information and do something to make the information or the response more appropriate. One of the things when the humeral head goes too far forward, as we see in the forward shoulder position, is it will start to tighten down around the shoulder complex so that there's more stability of the humeral head when the client's doing push-ups or overhead presses or rows. Unfortunately, or I should say sometimes, our clients are doing exercises that directly contribute to the forward shoulder position in addition to already being in the forward shoulder position. So the nervous system can only do what it can do or respond to the information it's receiving and what it sees as a threat, so to speak. The humerus going forward is a threat to the humerus coming out of the socket, so what's it going to do? It's going to tighten things down. It wants to make the pattern more efficient, not more optimal. It's trying to make it more efficient, so it's going to help you get into this position easier, and it's also trying to protect your joint from subluxing or dislocating. So it's going to tighten things down so that you don't sublux or dislocate your joints. However, in the process, it's also creating the sensation of tightness or a limited range of motion. That's why in the integrated movement system, we pay so much attention to before, pre, and post-exercise range of motion. We look at clients' range of motion, for example, for shoulder flexion before they do an exercise, then they do the exercise, and then look at it after. Because range of motion will give you a snapshot, an immediate snapshot into whether or not your client was maintaining or the nervous system was putting out good information. Therefore, they maintain optimal range of motion, their optimal range of motion, and or their range of motion improves after the exercise. So the other thing that impacts range of motion and tightness are your cues. The cues that you use with your client. And that's why cueing is such a valuable part of our process. Hello, Edmund. How are you? Thanks for joining us today here. We're discussing the 3 cues you can use for clients that have chronic tightness, neck and shoulder, as well as low back, as well as hips. So the cues we use are very important as well. So let's go over some cues, one for the shoulder, one for the low back, and one for the hip, and I'll show you where you can get more information if you enjoy this information. So first cue for the shoulder. One of the things we cue our clients into with their shoulder position is we think about the wide shoulder position. So therefore, when they're doing curls, for example, or they're doing rows, for example, so just say they're doing horizontal rows, or even pull downs or pull ups, we're cueing our shoulder to be wide. Because what happens is when our clients lock their elbows in, they start to narrow off the shoulders. So you can see, if I bring my chest up, pack my shoulders down and in, it creates this big sloping of our shoulder, another issue with chronic tightness of the neck and upper back, but it also narrows the shoulders. What we want to do is get the shoulder to sit where it belongs, and that is where there's space in between the arm and the body. So that way when the client is rowing, they have space here and they can maintain that wide shoulder position. So wide shoulders or length across the clavicles is one of the most common cues we use when training shoulder patterns. So there's your first cue. Second cue, what do we do with the low back and the core? Well, we're going to have our client activate the core, for sure, because when you're doing a deadlift, if you're doing a hinge, if you're doing a squat, if you're doing a chop pattern, you need the spine to be stabilized. What we don't have our clients do is we don't have them pull their abs in and pull themselves into a posterior pelvic tilt and flex their lumbar spine. Again, common cause of low back tightness. Because the other thing, another concept we teach in our certification program, the Integrated Movement Specialist Certification Program, is think about your muscles as rubber bands. Now this is a very simple analogy, but I want you to think about this. So if a muscle is overstretched, so say a muscle is overstretched like this rubber band is, well, the brain or the nervous system, the receptors in the muscles and the fascia and the connective tissue are sensing this tension, this tautness, this length. It doesn't as accurately, or the receptors don't as accurately pick up when the muscles are actually short. So most of the time, when your clients are complaining about, oh, it feels so tight here in my neck or here in my hips, it's not because the muscle is actually short and tight. It's actually because, just like that rubber band, it's being overstretched. And that's why if we pull the abs in, what we're doing is overstretching the erectors, and what the client is feeling as low back pain is actually overstretched erectors. So then they feel like, oh, I gotta stretch my back feels so tight, oh, so stretching. And what they're doing is actually perpetuating the issue. So that's why it's so important to teach your clients a more optimal neutral position and better length tension. So better cue is to stay long, allow the pelvis to relax, allow the lumbar spine to be more relaxed in this position, and then activate the core without changing the pelvis and or spinal position. So that's cue number 2. Think long, length through your spine, maintain a more neutral position of the rib cage, spine, and pelvis of that thoracolpelvic cylinder. Now, third cue for your clients regarding their hips. And it sort of feeds along, or marries along nicely to our last cue about the low back. Now let's think about the hips. Many of our clients have been taught when they're squatting or deadlifting or kettlebell swinging to come up and boom, thrust their hips forward. In fact, my buddy and I, Steven, we were just texting each other about all the people we just saw in the gym. Both of us just got back from the gym. Both of us just saw in our respective gyms lots of people doing hip thrusters and deadlifts and all of this all day long, driving their pelvis forward. Again, if we think about those muscles as rubber bands, most of our clients say, oh, my hip flexors are so tight. They feel, oh, they're always banging their hips. I work with a lot of dancers for many, many years early in my career, professional dancers, and they'd always be like, oh, my hips are so tight, and bang, right here. That is not your psoas. That is your superficial hip flexor, either the rectus femoris, or more specifically, the tensor fascial lata over here on the lateral side. Well, if your client's doing deadlifts and hip thrusters and kettlebell swings where they're driving the pelvis forward into posterior pelvic tilt and to your sway, well, you're going to get over lengthening of the superficial hip flexors and shortening of the posterior hip. Well, guess where they feel tightness? They don't feel tightness where they're actually short and tight. They feel tightness out here because what they're sensing is, again, that overstretching of the hip flexors. So as they're going into the thrust position, they're getting overstretching of the hip flexors. So many therapists, including chiropractors, physical therapists, trainers, massage therapists say, oh, go stretch your hip flexors because everybody's hip flexors are short and tight. No, they're not. Do your evaluations. Make sure your client actually has short and tight hip flexors before you have them stretch their short and tight hip flexors, or they're actually over-lengthened hip flexors. Most of our clients we find actually have over-lengthened hip flexors, not short and tight hip flexors. Use your assessments, don't take my word for it. So, what's the proper cue for deadlifts and squats and kettlebell thrust is to align that thoracic cylinder, and as you come up from that position, boom, come up straight as if you're driving the head towards the ceiling, maintain that cylinder alignment. You're still activating the glutes. Your core is still activated. You're just not thrusting the pelvis forward, thrusting that femoral head forward in the socket. You're not overstretching the hip flexors and shortening down the glutes. So there you have it. 3 cues. Wide shoulder, align and control the thoracic cylinder for the low back, and maintain the pelvis position, activate the glutes. Don't overactivate the glutes and thrust the pelvis forward for the hips and low back. And that's just those simple cues can make all the difference in your training, your client's training, and what they're experiencing through chronic tightness. So there's quite a bit of information there. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it fit with how you think and how you approach working with your clients. Remember, we're never guessing. We're always using our assessments to drive what we do from a corrective exercise standpoint, and that drives what we do through a functional training perspective. We want to respect alignment, breathing control, train our clients to maintain alignment, breathing control through their patterns, and that way the nervous system rewards them with more optimal alignment, control, range of motion, and they're able to maintain their mobility, and our clients experience a lot less chronic tightness. And that's, using this information, that's how you can become that go-to specialist for your current clients and attract more individuals that need, want, and will pay you for your expertise. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you like this video, share it with your like-minded colleagues. If you don't, go ahead, blast me. It's all good. I got wide shoulders, wide-ish shoulders. And my wife will take care of me if people bash me too bad. But I hope this information made sense. I hope it really helps you in your journey to help your clients to really understand how the nervous system works, as well as we know it today. There's obviously much more to learn about it. However, if you are also looking for a resource to help you use this information and learn a little bit more about how the nervous system works, and more importantly, use this information, apply this information to your training, check out Two Anatomy Geeks. I'll put the link below this video, above this video, wherever you're watching it. It's there somewhere. We just completed a 3-part series. It's about 5 to 6 hours of content where we go over the functional anatomy of the nervous system, the anatomy of the nervous system, how it relates to common issues of the neck, low back, as well as hips, how it relates to things like sciatica and thoracic outlet syndrome, how these posture cues can make a big difference in some of these nerve-driven issues, because a lot of your neck problems, your clients' neck problems, are actually nerve-driven issues. It's just manifesting as tightness. Their low back, their weakness in their low back, their hips, their serratus, muscles like that. Those issues are actually nerve-related issues, so we help you identify how that happens, why that happens, and what you can do about it while working within your scope of practice. So check out that link. I'll put it down there. Look forward to seeing you next time at Integrative Movement Insider. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for being a part of our community. Thanks for all you do for your clients and your community, and being a light for those who need to find the light in the darkness. Make it a great day. And yes, Pete Brislow. Trust me, because of my beard. Yeah, my wife hates it. It's getting real white, so we'll see about that. I'm keeping it for a while. Thanks, guys. Be good. Bye-bye.